The entire concert hall went silent. A small boy in worn-out shoes slowly walked toward the grand piano. Someone in the audience whispered and laughed. Who let him on the stage? But 30 seconds later, the same audience would be standing on their feet, in tears. Because the truth about that boy was something no one saw coming. His name was Oliver Bennett, 12 years old. Thin, quiet, invisible. Oliver lived in a small gray apartment on the edge of the city of Manchester, the kind of place where the elevator rarely worked and the hallways smelled like old paint and rainwater. His mother worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and serving coffee during the day. Money was always tight. Some nights dinner was just toast and tea. But Oliver never complained, because Oliver had something that made the world feel different. Music. Not expensive headphones, not fancy lessons. Just music that lived quietly inside his mind. Every afternoon after school, Oliver would stop in front of the window of a music store. Inside the glass stood a beautiful black grand piano. Shiny, perfect, untouchable. Oliver would stand there for minutes. Sometimes, just staring at it. His reflection in the glass looked small and out of place, but inside his imagination, he could already hear the notes. His fingers would move in the air like he was playing invisible keys. People walking past often gave him strange looks. Some even laughed, but Oliver didn't notice, because in his mind, the music was already playing. At home, there was no piano, not even a keyboard. Just an old wooden table. But every night after finishing homework, Oliver would sit at that table. He would place his fingers carefully on the surface, and he would play, not real keys. Just memory. Notes he imagined, melodies he created. 4 hours. Sometimes until midnight. His mother once asked him softly from the doorway, "Oliver, what are you doing?" He smiled shyly and replied, "Practicing." She looked at the empty table inside, but she didn't stop him, because she saw something in his eyes. Oh, one morning at school, everything changed. The principal walked into the classroom with a bright smile. "Students, listen up. Next month, our school will host a city talent showcase." Excited whispers filled the room. There will be singing, dancing, and of course, the principal added proudly, "a piano performance." The winner would receive a music scholarship. For most students, it sounded fun, but for Oliver it sounded impossible. Still, something deep inside his chest whispered, "Try." That afternoon, Oliver slowly approached the music teacher. Her name was Mrs. Whitaker. She was known for being strict and honest. Oliver stood nervously beside her desk. "Excuse me, Mrs. Whitaker." She looked up from her papers. "Yes." Oliver swallowed. I want to sign up for the piano performance." For a moment, the room went completely quiet. Then someone behind him laughed. Another student whispered loudly, "Wait, does he even own a piano?" More laughter spread across the classroom. Oliver felt his ears burn. Mrs. Whitaker adjusted her glasses. "Oliver," she said carefully, "have you taken piano lessons before?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am." "Do you practice somewhere?" "Not really." The class burst into louder laughter. One boy shouted, "So he practices on the air piano." Oliver stared at the floor as his fingers slowly curled into his sleeves. Mrs. Whitaker sighed. "This competition is very serious, Oliver. Students who enter usually train for years." Her voice softened slightly. "Maybe you should try something else. Art, poetry, anything, but not piano." Oliver nodded quietly. "Okay." He turned around and walked back to his seat, and the laughter followed him the entire way. That night, Oliver didn't sit at the wooden table. He just stared at it. For the first time, the invisible piano felt silly. Maybe they were right. Maybe music wasn't for people like him. Maybe dreams were for rich kids with real instruments. His mother noticed the silence and placed a small plate of toast beside him. "What happened today?" Oliver shrugged. "Nothing. but his eyes said everything. She sat across from him. "Oliver, do you remember your father?" Oliver nodded slowly. His father had died when he was very young. "He loved music," she said gently. "He used to say something." She leaned forward. "Talent doesn't care how much money you have." Oliver looked up. "Then why does everyone say I can't play?" His mother smiled softly. "Because they haven't heard you yet." That night Oliver returned to the table. He placed his fingers down slowly and carefully, and he began to play again. Soft, imaginary notes filled the quiet apartment. Not loud, not perfect, but full of heart. And for the first time in hours, Oliver smiled, because maybe, just maybe, he wasn't practicing for nothing. 3 days later, something strange happened at school. Mrs. Whitaker walked into the classroom looking serious. She placed a sheet of paper on the desk. "The piano performer for the talent showcase just dropped out," she announced. The room filled with murmurs. "We need a replacement." Her eyes scanned the classroom. Then suddenly they stopped on Oliver. The same boy everyone had laughed at. She hesitated, then said slowly, "Oliver, do you still want that chance?" The class exploded with laughter again, but Oliver didn't laugh. He just stared at the floor, his heart beating louder than anything else in the room. This was it. The moment everyone expected him to fail. And he had only one answer. He slowly raised his hand. Yes. The laughter grew louder, but Oliver didn't hear it anymore, because deep inside, the music had already begun. The night of the talent showcase finally arrived. The large concert hall in Manchester was glowing with bright golden lights. Parents, teachers, and students filled every seat. The room buzzed with excitement, whispers, and the soft sound of programs flipping in people's hands. On the center of the stage sat a beautiful black grand piano, shiny, elegant, and powerful. It looked like it belonged to professional musicians, not school children. Backstage, contestants were getting ready. A girl named Emma Clark warmed up her voice, and a boy named Daniel Harris practiced violin scales. Everyone looked confident. Everyone. Except Oliver. He sat quietly on a wooden chair in the corner, his hands resting on his knees while his worn-out shoes tapped nervously on the floor. From behind the curtain, he could hear the audience talking, and some of the voices sounded familiar. "Isn't that the boy who doesn't even have a piano?" One person whispered. "Yeah, I heard he practices on a table," another replied with a chuckle. "Well, this should be interesting." Oliver swallowed as fear wrapped around his chest. Maybe Mrs. Whitaker was right. Maybe it didn't take long. The show began, and one by one performers stepped onto the stage. Emma Clark sang beautifully, and the audience clapped loudly. Daniel Harris played the violin with confidence, and more applause filled the hall. Each act looked polished, professional, and prepared. Backstage, Oliver listened quietly. With every performance, his heart beat faster, because soon it would be his turn. Finally, the host stepped forward and said, "And now, our final performance of the evening." The audience leaned forward as the host read from the card. "Please welcome Oliver Bennett." For half a second the whole stayed quiet, and then whispers spread like wind. "Who?" Someone asked. "It's that kid," another voice replied. "Wait, seriously?" Some students in the back even laughed. From the side of the stage, Oliver slowly walked out. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience, but he could still hear them whispers. Doubt, judgment. His small figure looked even smaller next to the huge grand piano. He reached the piano bench, sat down, and placed his fingers gently on the keys. For a moment, nothing happened. The entire hall waited. Someone in the back muttered, "Maybe he forgot how to play," and a few people chuckled. Oliver closed his eyes and took one deep breath. Then he pressed the first key. A single note floated through the hall, soft, clear, beautiful. The audience stopped whispering. Then Oliver played the second note, and the third. Suddenly the melody began to grow. His fingers moved across the keys like flowing water. The music was gentle at first, like a quiet sunrise, but slowly it became stronger, richer, and full of emotion. The same boy everyone had laughed at was now creating something incredible. Parents stopped whispering. Teachers leaned forward in their seats. Mrs. Whitaker's eyes widened, because what she was hearing felt impossible. Oliver wasn't just pressing random notes. He was telling a story. The music sounded like struggle, like hope, like a child dreaming in a tiny apartment. The melody rose higher and higher, and his fingers moved faster as confidence filled every note. Suddenly the entire hall could feel it, the emotion, the passion, the truth inside the music. Even the students who had laughed earlier were now completely silent. One girl in the front row whispered, "Is he really playing like that?" No one answered, because nobody could look away. Then came the final section. The music grew powerful, bold, magnificent. Oliver's fingers flew across the keys, left hand, right hand fast and precise, like he had been playing his entire life. The final melody echoed through the hall like a wave crashing against the shore, and then one last chord exploded through the concert hall. The sound filled every corner of the room, and then everything stopped. Silence. Pure silence. For 2 seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. Oliver slowly lifted his hands from the piano, unsure what would happen next. Then suddenly a single clap came from the front row. Mrs. Whitaker. Then another clap. And another. Within seconds, the entire audience exploded into applause. People stood up from their seats. Parents cheered. Students shouted. A standing ovation filled the entire hall. Some people even had tears in their eyes, because they had just witnessed something unforgettable. The boy everyone believed would fail had just delivered the most powerful performance of the night. Oliver looked out at the crowd in shock. He hadn't expected this. He had only expected laughter. But now the same people who had doubted him were clapping the loudest. After the applause finally settled, the judges walked onto the stage. One of them asked gently, "Oliver, where did you learn to play like that?" Oliver hesitated before answering honestly. "I practiced on a table at home." The audience gasped. The judge smiled. "You mean?" Without a piano, Oliver nodded. "Yes." The judge looked at the others in disbelief and then turned back to Oliver. "Well, tonight, the piano finally met the boy who deserved it." The audience burst into applause again. Later that night, the winner of the scholarship was announced. "First place," the announcer said, and the hall went silent. Oliver Bennett. The crowd erupted once more. Oliver walked onto the stage slowly, still stunned and still humble, but no longer invisible, because everyone now knew the truth. Talent doesn't come from money. It doesn't come from expensive lessons. Sometimes it comes from a small apartment, an old wooden table, and a boy who never stopped believing in the music inside his heart.